generally when people examine especially something horrifying that's done by humanity, they make the assumption that it's other people doing it, and that's a big mistake in my estimation, because if a lot of human beings have done something terrible, you can be sure that being a human being that you're capable of it. When you read these terrible things, you have to understand that you're reading about you. If you don't understand that you're reading about you, then you don't actually understand the stories, because you put yourself in the position where you're automatically the good person who would never do anything like that. And then these other people are, well, they're devils in some sense, right? And it's very easy for people to make that division. But it's a horrific realization when you think that that devil that you see outside is the same thing that's inside, and that you don't know until you're put in a situation like that what you might do. And then it's even worse, because if you look at the historical evidence, it was ordinary people in some sense that produced the catastrophes of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union and Maoist China. I mean, they might not have originated it, but they certainly had the option to say no at different steps along the way, and they didn't, and these things do happen one horrible thing at a time. There's this great book called Ordinary Men, which describes the descent of a German police force from ordinary bourgeois middle-class men, essentially just ordinary policemen, who actually were raised before the Hitler Youth. They weren't indoctrinated, as young people. And they were brought into Poland to sort of mop up after the Germans had walked through. And it describes how they descended into the sort of people who would take naked pregnant women out into the middle of fields and shoot them in the back of the head. And what's horrifying about the book is that the author, Browning, details the stages by which this occurred. And well, for example, the commander of this unit told the men that they were going to have to do terrible things, but that they could go home if they wanted to. And then you think, well, there's an out. But then if you really think about it, you think, well, they're a tightly knit quasi-military organization, and one of the natural thoughts under that circumstance would be, well, I'm not going to leave my comrades to do all the dirty work. That would just be a matter of cowardice. And so you can see that, that there's an ethical requirement that would keep you there to begin with. The requirements for their horrific action kept ramping up. And like each time they accepted the requirement of doing one horrific thing, the probability that they would accept the next requirement increased. And what is also really interesting about that book, Ordinary Men, is that it's not like these men didn't suffer. Like, they were suffering terribly. They were physically ill. They were vomiting. They were tearing themselves apart psychologically, but they didn't quit. So that's a great book, because if you want to know how you walk down how you can be enticed to walk down a terrible path, that's the book to read. And it's very frightening, because if you read it properly, then you have to read it, again, as I said, as if you're one of the people to whom this is happening. Not the victim, but the oppressor, And I mean, you can also read it as the victim, that's fair enough, but it's ordinary people who participate in these things, and that's a very, very terrifying thought.